So for this demo, we're going to be going over the Square Invoice feature added to the NetSuite Suite app. What's going to happen is we're going to go through a walkthrough of how these Square invoices are being generated and paid, and then we're also going to go through a quick setup of the configs and the options that users have while using this app. So to get us started, I have a a sales order created over here, although it is a brand new one. So let me just go ahead and fill in some information so that we actually are able to charge the customer that would be paying for this. Perfect. And then under our billing tab, I have a credit card selected, so I'm just going to unselect this to make sure that no payments are made inside NetSuite. And over here, we have our Square Invoice config. For the Square Invoice configs, you're able to set one up as default so that whenever you're creating a record, it gets selected automatically. For our purposes, I'm going to go ahead and change it to use the one that I created, so this one over here. Now, when I go ahead and save the sales order, it'll generate a Square invoice for us. Perfect. There we go. We see up here that we have one Square invoice and it's in the draft status, and I'll showcase what that is once I go here. So underneath the billing tab, we now have this Square invoice, and over here, our Square invoice is generated. So let's go ahead and open this up. And this is some of the information that's presented. I have it set up in the config where it's not sent over to Square just yet. So this would typically be done if the merchants want to manually edit the information before sending them out the emails. In most scenarios, I imagine they would want it to be published automatically and sent to them immediately. But for the purposes of this demo, I just kind of want to showcase some of the information on this page and walk us through it. The main thing to point out is down below over here in this table here, where my Square invoice config has it set up to have a balance and deposit to be paid of 50% each. The deposit is due immediately, and the balance will be due in 30 days from now. So that means that once I publish this record, the customer would get an email saying that they owe 50% of this, and they would owe the remainder of it. They'll get a second email in 30 days for the remainder. Some other options up here are what type of payment methods are allowed on the Square page. So when the customer goes to that Square page, they could use cards, gift card, bank accounts for ACH, et cetera, et cetera. And other than that, you have what type of method you want to share with. If the customer has auto pay, they could go through with that, but I won't be covering those for this just to kind of keep it short. So let me go ahead and press save here. And over up here, we now have two buttons. Generate Square Invoice Draft just means send it over to Square, but don't notify the customer. Generate Square Invoice Draft and Publish means send it over to Square and then send out the follow-up email. And there we go. We now have this published. So at all times, there's always going to be this public URL link where if ever this needs to be sent out, it's possible. But if I go ahead and check my emails now, let me just remove the date filter. Maybe that would help it out. Yep, there we go. So over here, we have the email that comes in, and you can see the breakdown with the payment schedule included on here, the breakdown of the items. And let me just go ahead and make the payment here. So over here, we have the list of options. One to point out is really the ACH method that is going to be supported through Square Invoices. And when we go ahead and do this, the users are going to be able to select the banks that they want to pay with. Let me just continue as guest here. So you have the option of these banks to pay with. Let me go ahead and just pay with a credit or debit card for simplicity's sake. Test. And let me pay this amount of 178. Okay, perfect. So we see that the payment was made. We have the charge that went through successfully. And we could also see that another payment is going to be due on October 24th, where a second email would come through. Although if ever the payment wants to be collected in other ways, it's fully possible. That's because everything is in Square. So over here, we have our list of Square invoices, and we see that we have our current one that was partially paid. The follow-up payments could be made through the Square Invoice solution, again, through the follow-up email, or it's also going to be possible for, field technicians that might have the Square point of sale application on their phone. They could charge the customer directly that way as well. So now this payment went through. Back into NetSuite, if we look at our Square Invoice notifications, we see that we now have this pending notification that we just paid. Within NetSuite, every 15 minutes, we have something running in the background that'll process these payments and create the records to be paid. So just to kind of showcase what the final payment would look like in this scenario is because we had a sales order, a customer deposit gets created for them. And we could see that the payment was successful. It was paid through Square Checkout, and all of that is good. That should cover the process for making the payment through Square Invoices. Now to go over some of the configs that we saw before, and these configs that I'm mainly talking about is the options that are being able to be set on this page here. So if I open this up, we have a few different options that can be done. So this one here is the use as default. So when this is checked, you could choose what records you want this config to be selected for. So if you want it for estimates, sales orders, invoices, over here is the option of if they want to manually use that button to send out the Square invoices and publish them to the customer, or if they want it to be done automatically. So if I'm using auto publish invoices on save, what's going to happen is that when I save my invoice in NetSuite, when I save my sales order, and I'm using this config, the the emails we sent out automatically to the customer on the due dates. No other work is needed by the seller. Everything's going to be done automatically like that. I imagine this scenario will be one of the most popular ones. Over here, we have the accepted payment method. So again, the card, gift card, bank account for ACH, Cash App payments. This is also the option if we want to itemize the invoice or not. So if we go back to our email, we can see here that we have it itemized. We have the option to disable that if customers just want to send, the full price without everything involved. And here is the auto charge customer's default payment instrument. That can be done on the customer's record under financial. And over here, we have the Square Invoice default pay instrument. So you would just need to create a new one of these and select the card that they have saved on their file. And then over here is how we could select the payment schedule. So there's always the option for one payment in full if there never needs to be a breakdown. And then there's also the option for deposit with a balance due later, which is how I had it set up. When you do options like this, you're able to choose the due date. So by default, the balance will always be due 30 days after the invoice is due, and then the deposit would be due immediately. And over here on the right side, you're able to choose the percentages you want for this. If the users are using the Square Invoice Plus subscription in their Square account, they also have the option to have installments. So installments is just they could have multiple ways, like as many as needed ways to make payments. So let's say they have one that's going to be doing 40 days at 10%, another one due in 70 days at 40%, et cetera, et cetera. There's no limit to how many installments that could be used.